At present, the median net worth for somebody in their 20s, it's under $8,000. But too often the perception of where and how to make the most money is media and personality influenced. In television, film, and music, we glamorize Wall Street and Silicon Valley, not middle America. But business ownership in any town USA is increasingly the foundation for our very highest wage earners. As Juliet Chung of the Wall Street Journal recently reported, behind a paycheck, the largest source of income for the 1% highest earners in the U.S. isn't being a partner at an investment bank or launching a 1 in a million tech startup. It's owning a medium-sized regional business. Many of them are distinctly boring and extremely lucrative, like auto dealerships, beverage distributors, grocery stores, dental practices, and law firms. That analysis was based on the work of Owen Zidar, a Princeton University economist, and Eric Zwick, an economist at the University of Chicago. Dr. Zidar will join me in just a moment. The two are soon to publish a book on this very subject. They studied anonymized tax data from 2000 to 2022. Their focus, S corporations and partnerships. Typical of those were medium-sized businesses with annual sales of 20 million and 100 employees. Their findings built off a previous academic paper for which they were co-authors called Capitalists in the 21st Century. From that analysis, quote, our findings draw attention to a class of entrepreneurs hidden from public view, who prevail among top earners and whose human capital income is key for understanding top incomes. The takeaway from both the prior and more recent analysis is that if we examine everyone in the United States and then focus on the top 10% of earners, for most, their main source of income is wages. But for the very top, those at the 0.1% level, it flips, and most of them are getting more of their income through profits from their businesses. Those businesses are typically not in finance, but rather they actively produce goods or services across diverse industries. Professors Zidar and Zwick, they gained access to data about who owns private jets and super yachts. And what do they find among the latter? Sure enough, dozens of auto dealers who live in random towns across America. This Wall Street Journal article also had examples of entrepreneurs who defy stereotypes and show that you can make money at anything in America as long as you do it right. There's Derek Olson, his Minnesota-based business, National Flooring Equipment. They make machines that rip up flooring. He makes millions due to the need for carpet removal at elementary schools in particular. They've got a lot of carpet, and the kids make a lot of mess. Then there's David McNeil. He dropped out of college and sold cars. On a trip to Scotland, he noticed they had superior car floor mats. So he took out a second mortgage, shipped over a bunch of these mats to sell. In the first year, he made $40,000. 2 years later, he made 10 times that amount. Today, his Illinois-based company, WeatherTech, you've heard of them. They sell hundreds of millions in auto accessories. The point is, America is still the land of opportunity. In fact, it may be truer today than it was 25 years ago. The data show that business owners worth 10 million or higher have more than doubled in the past quarter century, even adjusting for inflation. Sure, it's true that 1/3 inherited their businesses, but most are self-made. And many of these now 1%ers did not grow up themselves in privileged homes. They're ambitious, they're smart, but nor did they graduate from the most prestigious schools. In fact, many didn't go to college at all. And today, they don't live on the coasts. They tend to live somewhere in the middle of the country. There's even a name for this type of success coined by Professor Zidar. They're called the stealthy wealthy. Or, as a book first published in 1996 called them, the millionaires next door. The authors of that book, Thomas Stanley and William Danko, a compelling takeaway from that book was that many of the millionaires profiled were not doctors, lawyers, or executives, but skilled tradesmen and small business owners. And you could say that that book has aged well. Its authors found that a significant portion of millionaires were self-employed in what might be considered blue-collar or middle-market industries. Think plumbers, think electricians, contractors, or pest control operators. These individuals often built modest businesses over time. They exercised strict financial discipline and reinvested profits rather than indulging in lifestyle inflation. Unlike high-income professionals who sometimes live paycheck to paycheck in high-status neighborhoods, these tradesmen lived well below their means. They avoided debt. They focused on wealth accumulation rather than status signaling. As we discussed here recently, there's an overdue return now at play to teaching some of the trade skills to high school students rather than a continuation of the college for all mindset. Hopefully that will lead to more blue-collar workers getting to the 1%. So, graduates of the class of 2025, go forth, strive to establish a medium-sized regional business, seek to deliver goods and services, and you will prosper. Joining me now is Owen Zidar, professor of economics at Princeton. Dr. Zidar, why hasn't this registered with the popular consensus?
Thanks for having me. That's a great question. And I think, one of the biggest misconceptions for graduates is that the way you get rich is by earning high wages. And, that's just not true in the data, as you said, when you look at the very top.
Is it a culture thing? I mean, I can't think of too many that get all the attention in the media, in pop culture, music, film, TV shows that fit the bill you and I are describing, like the guy who's pulling up the carpet, in elementary schools and making a fortune because they need a lot of carpet and they got a lot of schools.
Now, some is cultural. I think some, it's just really hard to know who's wealthy. Wealthy people don't answer surveys, and so you have to rely on who you see in the news and some investigative reporting, but it's hard to get a systematic take of what's going on. I think one of the easiest ways to see it is to ask yourself, who's the richest person in your high school? And almost always the answer is going to be something like one of these beverage distributors, or someone, like in St. Louis, the Tracy family, who's a food redistributor. And, these companies can make hundreds of millions of dollars, and, they just don't show up on anyone's radar.
I made reference to the yacht and the private jet data. What did you look at and what did you find?
So, we have a sense from looking at the whole population of who's wealthy, but it's hard to identify them in other data sets. And so one of the ways to do it is to say, look, if you have a private jet, you're probably considerably wealthy. Now, some people don't, who are very wealthy, don't fly jets. They drive a Volvo and have a nice, quiet life. But some show up in these data, and it's amazing. We found dozens of car dealers all over the country, Indianapolis, you name it, who show up in these data. There's a guy, for instance, in the Boston area named Herb Chambers, who owns a couple really large yachts, and he's not even in the top 20 of the biggest auto dealers in the country.
You and I are having this conversation just after the House has passed what the president calls his big, beautiful tax bill. As I was reading some of your studies and analysis, it occurred to me, this all has public policy considerations, right? What might they be? What are the lessons? I'm trying to speak to graduates today by addressing this and having you here, but what are the lessons for lawmakers?
I think the lessons for lawmakers is, it's very clear the signatures of this group on the bill that you mentioned. So there was an $820 billion component of the big, beautiful bill that passed the House that lowered rates for this group from basically made a deduction more generous from 20 to 23%. And that's more expensive than the reductions in Medicaid in the bill, which are really controversial. And when you ask people, like, why is this part included in the bill? I'm surprised it was more generous than the first Trump tax cuts. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal, was kind of searching around, and they said, oh, we just wanted to give a little bit more. But if people are looking to cut the deficit, that seems like a very clear place to go. Last time it was a 20% deduction, and it was a couple more points more generous. But because there's so much money here, it's really expensive. And so I think in terms of graduates, there should be this question of, why are you mortgaging our future by taking out huge deficits that are already, exacerbating a big fiscal problem we have, that should really be pro-growth things. And, from the last time, it didn't seem like there was a lot more investment from these sizable tax cuts for pass-through owners.
Dr. Zidar, final question. Do your students get it? You're a professor of economics at Princeton. In the Ivy League, do you sense that that your students understand, hey, maybe there's a future for me in, I'll quote The Graduate and date myself, plastics or recycling, garbage. I want to go to Princeton and be an auto dealer. I want to go to Princeton and I want to rip up carpet from the elementary school.
I'm doing my best to spread the gospel. In fact, I was meeting with somebody yesterday who reached out to me after he saw the Wall Street Journal story because he wants his 27-year-old daughter to get the gospel, so to speak. I think one of the issues is that, if you want to go and find some of these companies, they're not all in San Francisco and Brooklyn, and you need to have a broader sense because they really are everywhere in the country. And my hope is that, people will realize you can have a really good life if you own some of these companies. They can return much more than if you're reporting to someone else as a salaried worker.
Right. I want to own an HVAC business in Mississippi. Path to success. Thank you, Dr. Zadar. I find it fascinating. I look forward to your book.
Thank you very much.